I'd like to talk about depression and late diagnosed autism, kind of continuing where I left off from my last video about that. I'm not a mental health care worker. I never have been. These are only things that have worked for me. And I know everyone is different. Everyone has different neurology, and we're all just experiencing life differently, have grown up under different circumstances, etc. So there's no one size fits all solution because we're all different. So just keep that in mind. And I hope that some of the things that have helped alleviate some of my symptoms will work for someone else. So the things that have worked for me, and these are things that have helped alleviate my symptoms. There's no cure. It's not that there was any miracle cure that stopped it. It's just I've struggled with depression throughout my adult life. So these are just things that I've found that help alleviate that. So setting boundaries is a big thing. Stopping the over-explaining, or at least cutting way back on the over-explaining myself. And basically things that I do to take care of my body and keep my body healthy, because the body and mind, when the body feels bad, the mind follows. So just trying to keep myself feeling good, that's a big part of it. And isolation, self-isolating when I need to for short periods of time in moderation. So those are a few things that I have done. And I guess I'll start with setting boundaries. Setting boundaries is a big way that I help try to prevent depression and burnout and meltdowns from occurring. And it took me my whole life to figure out that setting a boundary and the momentary discomfort and awkwardness that comes with it, or that might come with it, is so much better, so much easier to deal with than not setting a boundary and feeling either violated or overwhelmed or being completely miserable, you know, having a meltdown because I put myself in a situation that I didn't need to be in. Setting boundaries can protect us from those things. So it was really important for me to learn to do that. And since whenever I was experiencing my depression, every depressive episode of my life, I was undiagnosed. My diagnosis is recent, so I hadn't even begun to really dive into what autism is. I knew I had to start listening to myself, my body, my nervous system, and navigating through life according to what it was telling me. And so I started trying to become more in tune with that. So the boundary setting, I just kind of had to feel out whether or not, kind of imagine how I would feel in a situation and realize that it wouldn't be good for my nervous system. And let's just say, for example, like if I had a friend ask me really deeply personal questions about my relationship, I would have to say no, because like, you know, I didn't want to upset this friend or anything, but I would feel like it was a violation of the trust in my relationship to, you know, to talk about something too personal and private. And like that would be a minor boundary to set. But it was way better for me to say no and experience a minute of awkwardness or discomfort than to agree to something like, let's say, a social engagement or something, and go attend it and be miserable all night. And maybe that person asked me just to be polite and didn't even really care one way or another whether I attended. And I go and I'm awkward and I'm sticking my foot in my mouth or something and make the whole situation bad. So I could go and be in a miserable situation, and it could be sensory overload, overly stimulating environment. Or I could say no, and I can go home and I can be in my Hello Kitty PJs and I can watch TV or play video games and eat my frozen pizza and have the house totally quiet otherwise, and my one lamp on and be totally comfortable. So 5 minutes of slight awkwardness and discomfort versus 5 hours. And I can't believe it took me that long to figure out that it could just be that easy to avoid discomfort, a lot of discomfort. And so, so I had to set boundaries in friendships, relationships, family boundaries, and work boundaries. And it can be something as simple as turning off the sound notifications on your phone, because, oh my gosh, I get so startled by sound notifications on my phone. And that can totally ruin a day for me. I know that sounds kind of exaggerated, but it's not. Like, I can be really in the zone doing something like painting and then get, the ding of a notification, and it just startles me and scares me and tears me away from whatever it is I'm doing. And then I can't get refocused. So I basically put, all of my notifications on silent. And when I'm ready, then I can look at my notifications. And you might say, but what if it's an emergency? Then hang up and dial 911, because I am not a paramedic. Not over-explaining. That's another thing that I tried to stop doing. I tried to stop over-explaining myself when people seem to misunderstand me repeatedly. I have this, my knee-jerk reaction is to explain again, when someone doesn't understand me the first time, or if there's been a miscommunication. So I would over and over explain myself if somebody didn't understand me or if there was a miscommunication. And I had someone tell me, I will never understand you or the way you think. And at first that really hurt me. And I gave it a few days to process, and I thought, well, they're not wrong, because everyone in the universe, every living being in the universe observing it, has a different perspective. So I will never get any other person to understand me perfectly. Nothing will ever be understood exactly from my perspective. So if I explain something once and they don't understand where I'm coming from, I might try to explain it one more time, but that's really all that I'm going to try to explain it from now on, because I could waste years trying to explain myself to someone who doesn't understand me, and all I have done is caused myself more grief and misery and to feel more misunderstood. Where if I just drop it and shut my pie hole after the second explanation, maybe that person is just like me and has a little delayed processing time. And maybe if they think about what I said for a couple of days, they may come to realize that they understand more than they think they initially do. So if I was just making things worse by over-explaining and just yeah, I just needed to cut that short. And there's so much energy goes into that too. Just, I would really just put my heart and soul into it and feel so like, it would make me feel like my world was ending if this person didn't understand me, or when this person didn't understand me. And it would just feel like the end of my world that they didn't understand me. And that was really, really eating away at me. So they did me a favor by telling me that, because then I knew I didn't need to waste my time, or, you know, the really extra above and beyond effort that I was putting into trying to be understood was all futile. So I had to just kind of reel it in and stop doing that. And once I did, it actually helped. I have no idea if they understand me any better or not, but I feel better. I feel like I haven't wasted as much time and energy trying to make it happen, because it was like running into a brick wall repeatedly over and over, trying to, you know, thinking it would magically become a door. And so I just had to stop that. Taking care of myself was also something that was really, really important, because when my body feels bad, my mind just goes with it. And I started running 10 years ago because of a depressive episode, and it started making me feel a lot better. And then when I became vegetarian, I also noticed that I felt a lot better. So exercising and eating right are actually things that help you to physically feel better. And, you know, I've kind of just scoffed at the whole, you know, first line of defense against depression is to exercise and eat right, eat healthy, and get, you know, fresh air and sunshine. I'm kind of like, oh, that it was just that easy. Well, it's not a miracle cure, and they're not claiming that it is, but, you know, medical professionals don't say that for no reason at all. It's just like if you get your, you know, vehicle owner manual out and it tells you how often you need to, you know, rotate your tires or get your brakes checked. I'll go with that because there's so many different types of engines out there. And you're like, they don't know me, and they don't know my brakes and my tires. Well, maybe not, because sure, there are different driving surfaces, there are different driving patterns. My ex-husband used to slam on the brakes all the time, so it wore out brakes a little faster. But still, there is a there's a lifespan for these things, and they do wear out over time. So you can't just ignore them indefinitely. And so just by doing, like, maintaining my body as if it's a machine. I saw this thing on Pinterest that said, if you think of self-care as something that is too self-indulgent or whatever, try to think of it this way. If you do not perform system maintenance will be randomly scheduled for you. And I thought, oh crap, okay. I need to start performing system maintenance because I don't want to have a breakdown. And so just trying to keep up with the healthcare, you know, keep myself healthy. And so I would try to make those things easy for me when I was depressed. I worked them into my routine so that if something was part of my routine, I'm way more likely to just do it, because I don't like to deviate from my routine. So park a mile away from my office so that I'm forced to walk at least 2 miles a day and get in a little exercise 5 days a week, whether I feel like it or not. I'm kind of forced to do it because it's part of my routine. And, you know, being a vegetarian, that's part of my routine. That's my dietary standard, whatever you want to call it. And so whenever I was depressed, I still had to get out and walk a mile to and from my office. And I was buying Amy's organic frozen dinners because they are good, they're convenient. My grocery store always has them in stock, and there's no meal prep and no cleanup. And they're organic, vegetarian, minimally processed. So they're pretty healthy, and instant oatmeal for breakfast. So I would just do that stuff so that I didn't have any kind of meal prep, and the cleanup was very minimal. I was just making it easy on myself to eat healthy and easy on myself to clean up after myself, because I would totally neglect things and like house chores. So it just made it a lot easier on me just doing that kind of stuff. And also I did mindful walking. I take a break in the middle of my workday during lunch and go for a little walk on a nature trail by my office. And I do mindful walking because sitting meditation doesn't work for me because I have an old sciatic nerve injury that makes that uncomfortable for me. And so just taking those moments to be in the present and just be present and aware of what was going on in that moment and noticing the little details in nature. And I would sometimes take a picture of like a wildflower or, you know, a bug on a leaf that caught my eye, or birds or rabbits and things like that. So I had, you know, a camera roll full of all these little things that would spark a moment of joy instead of, you know, selfies and memes and things like that. Not that memes are bad, but, you know, it was just nice going through my camera roll and seeing pictures of things that made me happy. And just little moments that I would have this awareness and being in the present moment. And so lots of little happy moments add up to more happy time, and more happy time adds up to less depression. So if I could stay focused and be in the present and observe little things like that, the little, like, just, and try to be aware of the things that I enjoyed, whether it was like a cup of coffee or my frozen pizza, or, you know, just like a new anime or something that I started, like whenever I started Demon Slayer, it was a very happy moment for me. So, just little things like that. You don't need like a big expensive vacation to, you know, bring joy to your life. Like little tiny things just that you take a moment and appreciate. So doing that, training myself to do that, it really helped. And it's way less expensive also to just take little moments and observe things that bring you joy, you know, that are like small things like wildflowers and a cup of coffee instead of, you know, big elaborate vacations and stuff. So those are some things that I did. And I would listen to Dharma talks sometimes when I would do the mindful walking, because they're always so calm. I would listen to the Plum Village YouTube stuff, and the, you know, voices are very calm and usually talking about something that's, you know, very neutral, soothing. I'm not religious, but they would say stuff that I enjoyed thinking about. So I would listen to that. And on the flip side, I would listen to metal, because studies have shown, according to an article I read on BBC News, that people who listen to metal tend to be happier. And I happen to just like metal, but I would listen to Finnish folk metal because that's some happy stuff. And it's not cheesy happy. Like there's some, like, it feels like a slap in the face sometimes if I'm depressed and somebody's listening to some overly happy crap. And when I'm listening to the Finnish folk metal, I'm like, Amorphous is one of my faves. And I say that it sounds like a band of Urukai wandering into the Shire and discovering what it's like to have 7 good meals instead of maggoty bread for 3 stinking days. And so you got the growly with the happy music, and I really liked that combination. So things like that, just finding joy in little things and doing things that brought me happiness. And and self-isolation was also something that I did, but I know that's counterintuitive and kind of goes against what the therapist would say for a neurotypical to do for depression. But for me, it wasn't about isolating myself from people specifically. It was isolating myself from information and sensory overload. It's like, I was watching Doctor Who the other day, and it was one of the specials with Donna, and I just had this aha moment, and I thought, I'm a human taking in Time Lord information, and my little brain, my little human brain, just can't handle all this information. And I'm not a genius, so it takes me a while to process all the stuff that I'm taking in. So when I isolate, I'm giving myself the necessary time for all of that information to process. Because if I do the exposure therapy, like, you know, exposing myself to situations and putting myself out there, like some people recommend, then I'm just adding more input, and my brain is like a computer with all these processes running, and all of the input is like someone clicking the mouse over and over and over while the pinwheel of death is spinning. And I needed to just remove myself from the situation and let all those processes catch up without anyone clicking the mouse or adding new processes. So, you know, being away from that in my own environment where I could control all of the sensory input was a huge contributor to just, you know, gaining a sense of calm and peace. And I didn't feel selfish for taking that time to myself. I know that some people have a harder time finding time to themselves because they have families. They're not like single like I am and just with, you know, my own house and no one else. But if you can find a way to just take a weekend to yourself, or you know, just find some nice quiet peaceful spot in nature to just kind of let all those processes catch up, it can be helpful if you have a problem with sensory overload and, you know, sensory processing. So those are some things that I did, and I hope that some of this has been helpful to someone.